Om Rupam Rupa Vivarijitassa Bhavato Dhyanena Yat Kalpitam Stuthya Nirvachaniyata Akhila Guru Durikita Yanmaya Vyapitvancha Nirakritam Bhagavato Yatitha Yatradina Shantavyam Jagadisha Tadvikalata Doshatrayam Atkritam Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tatsat. O Lord, in my meditation I have attributed forms to Thee, who art formless. By my hymns I have, as it were, contradicted that Thou art indescribable. By going on pilgrimage I have, as it were, denied Thy omnipresence. O Lord, please forgive me for these three mistakes committed by me. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all. Good morning, friends. We usually have a little bit of music, piano music, played by one of our members. This morning he couldn't come, but we have taped some of his music. That will be played for a few minutes and then the talk will be given. His name is Sheldon Douglas, the musician's name. This is one of the miracles that we can record music. It can be played later. Our ancient ancestors could not perhaps do that. I would say perhaps, because some of us have a very high opinion about our ancestors. As the saying goes, we said, in those good old days, as the old days were always better. But I don't think so. I think the human beings have been evolving. They have been evolving, and it is not to say that those ancestors should be slighted. No, they are very important. Had they not been there, we would not be here today. So we should be grateful to them. But to say that they knew everything and we don't know as much as they knew, that will not be necessarily a correct statement. But it is quite possible that some ancient people, they knew certain things which we have yet to know. Meditation is one such thing. But then meditation is an English word, and English language is very new compared to some other languages which our ancestors used to speak. For example, when Rome was at the peak of its glory, then we read that in England, the Goths and Vandals, they used to paint their faces and wear strange clothes and would live in forests. They were not that developed yet. But eventually, the English people, they progressed a lot, and you can see their influence all over the world. Any young race or nation has more vitality, more energy. A young nation is like a young man or a young woman. A lot more energy one has when one is young. But young people have intelligence, but they don't necessarily have wisdom. Wisdom is a different thing. Wisdom comes from experience. When a person has acquired a lot of knowledge, information rather, about this world, then eventually, out of that information, they are able to draw certain conclusions. Conclusions which abide in time longer. That you may call wisdom. But it is the young people who climb mountain peaks. It is the young people who join the Olympics and win medals, not the elderly. But some elderly people, having gained enough of experience in this world, in the pursuit of happiness, they have gone through many, many experiences. And they have learned certain things which it is not possible for the young people to know. That's why some elderly people have wisdom, not all of them. So I am now talking about some ancient people. They acquired wisdom. They got to know certain things which we have yet to know. It may sound funny, but it is a fact. Meditation is an English word. It is a new language compared to some of the ancient languages, one of which was Sanskrit or Sanskrita. That was the word, but the Englishmen, they don't take a lot of spice, they don't add too much spice in their food. That's why you see their tongues are not that efficient. Some people in Asia, they eat a lot of spice, chili pepper and whatnot. So their tongues are very efficient. So they could pronounce words which the Englishmen could not pronounce. Like Sanskrita was the name of that language. The English made it Sanskrit. Seattle. Well, that was the origin of that name is one Native American Indian chief. His name was Chief Sealth. But those who spoke in English, they could not pronounce this word. They made it Seattle. But we must consider these things with sympathy. Yes, one who is a child will grow up someday, isn't it? The children cannot speak the way the adults speak, but they eventually learn. So this language eventually will become older, and then it will have that ability. I have been to many Latin American countries on invitation, and I have found that in many of those countries, they make fun by telling how those whose mother tongue is English, they try to speak in their language. So the certain sounds are not there in English. Anyway, it is all right. In spite of that, English is a great language. So Sanskrit or Sanskrita was the language spoken by some people who lived in that subcontinent, part of which is India. They had the same civilization at that time. They used to speak many dialects, and one of those dialects was reformed, and then it was called Sanskrita. The word Sanskrita means something which has been refined. In that language, many books were written. No, at first they would not write books because the paper which was invented by the Chinese, that was not there at that time. They used to use barks of certain trees, or they would use certain kinds of leaves on which they would write. You see, and that country, being a tropical country, is infested with termites and other insects which are very fond of chewing paper and something which is similar, wood. So sometimes they inscribed certain things on rocks, and they are still durable. There's still some of them are there. So they had certain disadvantage. So to solve that problem, what they would do is they would ask everyone to develop a short memory, and then teachings would be given orally, and the students would hear and would have to remember those teachings. And in order to do that, they needed concentration. The mind had to be concentrated through the hearing organ on what was being taught by the teacher. Otherwise, nobody would be able to understand what the teacher is saying. Concentration. Yes. In order to know anything, we need an equipment which has been provided to us by the Almighty. And that equipment is the mind. And when the mind is conscious, it does only one thing. it thinks. And thinking is knowing. Even when a person says, I am thinking, it means that he knows that he is thinking. Thinking is knowing. When a person says, I don't know this, then that person knows that that person does not know certain thing. So thinking is knowing. There is no difference between the two. And thinking is absolutely necessary for us to understand something which we don't know. Only with the help of our mind we can know something which we didn't know before. It is a wonderful equipment that we have, the mind. Once a great soul was born in India in the mid-19th century. His name was Swami Vivekananda. Here, if you find an American who does not know what Disneyland is, then you'll think, what kind of American is he? So also, if a person of India who does not know Vivekananda, then you will wonder, what kind of person is this? See, so many streets have been named after Swami Vivekananda in India. And in the Parliament of India, there is a statue of Swami Vivekananda. And there are so many statues everywhere of that great man. He was a great thinker. And he was extraordinary in the sense that he was, even when he was young, he was a great thinker and he had great wisdom. That makes him extraordinary. And it is he who said the difference between a genius and an idiot is in their ability to concentrate their minds. A genius can concentrate his or her mind in a manner which an idiot cannot do. An idiot means a person who does not know how to learn things. That person is an idiot. But the ability is there. If that person is taught how to concentrate his or her mind, then that person will be able to know. So, what is meditation? Meditation is concentration of mind, but in a special way. It is not just ordinary concentration. Intense concentration, not on objects which are outside of us, but concentrating the mind within us. You may call it introspection. Some of the American psychologists, they did away with introspection. They said that is not reliable. That takes on the color. The truth discovered that way takes on the color of the thinker. There is some truth to it, but not the whole truth. So, deeper thinking enables us to know certain things which we won't know if we would understand something superficially or literally. If someone who is not as smart as some of you are, if that person is asked, close the door, and he brings nails and screws and he nails the door shut. He says, I have done it. But that was not the implication. The implied meaning was, that is, close the door in order that it can be opened later on. Or he said, open the door, and he unhinges the door. That's not the meaning. That is the literal meaning. And he can go to court and try to prove that he was right. But we know that all expressions or many expressions have implied meanings, deeper meanings. Even when you study rhetoric and prosody, for example, then there are many, you could get to know certain terms like innuendo and panoramasia and all these terms. And one such term is epigram. An epigram is what? When you first hear something, it may mean something which is impossible. But if you think deeply, you can get the inner meaning. So such an expression is an epigram. For example, the child is the father of man. That is an example. Well, if you take the literal meaning, it is an absurd statement. But if you understand the implied meaning, it makes sense. It is the child who will eventually become the father. So in that sense, the statement has been made. This is an example of an epigram. Are there some students who have come here today from some high school? No, not today. They are supposed to come one of these days during the season in which I will be giving talks on meditation. This is the first talk. So I don't want to exhaust everything in the first part of the talk. So I am just making you acquainted with, gradually, with the subject. So meditation means concentration, but a special type of concentration. And how the mind has to be concentrated, the degree of concentration that has been expressed through an analogy. Let us suppose there is oil in a bottle and there is an empty bowl. Now if I start pouring oil from that bottle into that empty bowl, then the oil will start flowing toward the bowl. The uninterrupted flow of the oil to the bowl, that is an analogy which can give us some idea about what meditation is. The Sanskrit word for meditation is dhyanam. But I will use the word meditation for your easy understanding. And so the uninterrupted flow of the oil, what does it mean? That means if oil be your mind and the bowl be the object of your thought, then your mind, your thoughts will flow to the object of your thought in an uninterrupted manner. It is not going anywhere else. And then that will be an example of meditation or dhyanam. Those ancient people, some ancient thinkers in India, they were able to develop this technique. Most probably through trial and error method. But nevertheless, they were able to develop the technique. And they called it dhyanam. But in the earliest literature that we have, and particularly there is a book called Rig Veda. The word Veda means knowledge. So it contained lots of information. Some information was conducive to one's spiritual growth, and some others were for mundane things. Nevertheless, they were called, all this knowledge was packaged together and would be called Veda. The word Veda means knowledge. It has come from the verbal root, Sanskrit verbal root, vid. Vid means to know. I was amazed to learn that when I visited Iceland on invitation, then they used that word vid to means know. And I heard that in some parts of Russia also, that word vid means to know. It looked like people thought the same way, or most probably there's some connection between one another, no matter in which part of the world they lived. So, in Rig Veda, it is a very ancient storehouse of literature. And there we find the word dhaya. Dhaya. We don't find the word dhyanam. Dhaya. And later on, this word dhaya became dhyanam. Much later. And another kind of books are there in India, and they are considered holy books because much has been taught through those books about God and the relationship of God, relationship between human beings and God, and the relationship of God and between the relationship of God and the world, and all these things have been discussed. And by many thinkers, and most of them are anonymous, you see. Anyway, and this group of literature is called Upanishad. Upanishad. And the meaning of the word, Sanskrit word Upanishad, means the proximity of which loosens the grip of ignorance on your mind. That is the meaning of the word Upanishad. Upa is the prefix, then comes another prefix, ni, and then shad. That means if you come close to this, then your ignorance, which you have in your mind, that will go and knowledge will become manifest. That is the idea. That could be said about any book. And a little child is learning how to read some simple words like cat, dog, and all these things. And by reading that, the child will know that these are the words which mean cat or dog. So the Upanishad. But the Upanishads speak of God more than anything else. And it's in the Upanishads we come to know that God is everywhere. Divinity is everywhere. And as divinity is everywhere, and we exist somewhere within that everywhere, then divinity must be present in all of us, whether we are aware of that divinity or not. And when divinity becomes manifested, then we know. See, so otherwise the world would have been like a Swiss cheese with so many holes where God is not there. God is everywhere. God, in order that God can be omnipresent, then God has to be present in each one of us. So the Upanishads teach us that we are divine. But divinity is in a latent state and it has to be made manifested. Like electricity. Electricity, there are so many conducting wires. We call them lines through which electricity is passing. But that is not visible. But it becomes manifested when that electricity connects itself to some contraption like the electric bulb, light bulb. Then you say, well, the lights are on now. But these lights are no other than electricity, which has become manifested as light energy. Also, let us consider some bulbs, light bulbs. They are of different wattage. One is of 5 watts, another one is of 100 watts, another one is of 1000 watts. And now if I turn them on, these 3 bulbs will not be giving out the same amount of light for obvious reason, because they are of different wattage. And So in the 1000-watt bulb, there will be most manifestation among these three of light energy. And in the 100-watt bulb or 60-watt bulb, it will be much less. In the 5-watt bulb, much, much less. Manifestation differs. So also divinity is present equally everywhere, but not equally manifested everywhere. And it has been said that some people who have been able to transform their minds into extraordinary minds, then those minds can manifest divinity much more than the other minds which have not been transformed that way. And the transformed mind, highly transformed mind, where divinity is most manifest, that is the mind of a saint or a divine incarnation. That's what our scriptures teach. Now, the Upanishads mention, there we find these Upanishads came a little later than Rig Veda. Rig Veda appeared. And there is an Upanishad called Katha Upanishad. There we read some verses where it has been clearly expressed what meditation is. And that ancient book, they came to know about meditation. Paranchikhani Vyatrina Sayambhu Tatsmat Parang Pashyati Nantaratman Kashid Dhira Amritattamichan Abhitya Chakshur Amritattamichan. Anyway, these are the verses. It's what I have just rattled out, that is Sanskrit, and the translation will be, that is, alas, it starts with a lamentation. Alas, Almighty God has created our sense organs and the mind in a defective way. They are defective because they are always focused outward. But some very calm people, their minds are calm. That's why they can concentrate their minds also. When the mind is not calm, it is not easy to concentrate the mind on a chosen object. So, some people who are of very calm temperament, in order to know their divine nature, they withdraw their senses and the mind from outside and focus them within. So this is the technique of meditation. The mind and the senses have to be withdrawn from the outside of us and focus them within us. That is meditation. It is not just ordinary concentration. Like children, they watch cartoons on Saturday mornings on TV. And it looks like their minds are glued to the TV screen. Their mothers go on asking them to come and have breakfast, but they don't even hear what their mothers are saying. So they have great concentration, it seems. But that is not meditation. That is not dhyana, because the concentration is outside. And to concentrate the mind, a person has to learn how to control the mind. If the mind is not controlled, then that mind cannot be concentrated. You may say, who controls the mind? Well, you have the awareness that you exist as something different from the mind. You own the mind. And you use the mind. You can concentrate the mind, or you can allow the mind to run around and become scattered. That is also possible. But that you factor is there. What is that you? Well, they say that the owner and the owned cannot be one. If you own a Mercedes-Benz car, You are not that car, even though that car is a good one. The car unfortunately gets demolished. Nothing happens to you because the insurance covered the entire amount. And there will be no insurance, then of course there will be some lamentation. So, you are not your car because you own the car and you are the owner. As owner, you have to be different from your car. In the same way, you own your body, so you can't be your body. You own your vital energy, which you use, so you can't be your vital energy. In the same way, you cannot be your senses or your mind, because you own them all. So you have to be different from your mind. What are you then? Then you may start thinking, oh, I know who I am. I am my ego. Ego is only a thought, the first thought of the conscious mind. See, first thought of the conscious mind is the ego. When that thought appears, that thought appears, then the world appears. It is a factor of separation. It separates you from everything else that you think you are not. You think you are not. So, ego. But ego is a thought. So then how can you be your thought, that ego? You can't be. You have to be different from it. Then, of course, you are confronted with a great problem. I am not my ego, you wonder. Then what am I? But still, there is something inside you which tells you that you cannot be your ego, because ego is a thought only. And as you cannot be your mind, you must be separate from it. So you must be separate from your ego. So what you really are is behind that ego somewhere. That is the real you. That is what is called divinity. The sages of India, the great thinkers of India, they said that that is divinity. And that divinity is not known. Can it be known just as I know this book? No, not in that manner. You see. Because in any act of knowing, three factors are needed. The knower, knowledge, and the object known. This is the object of my knowledge, this book. And I am the knower of that object. And what connects me to the object is that action which is called knowledge. These three factors have to be there in any act of knowing. But this is a world of time and space. And even Albert Einstein said that when the Big Bang happened, then the world, of course, was created. And then time and space were also created with the Big Bang. The time and space where we exist, that happened at the time of creation of this world. He echoed what we have in our scriptures, ancient scriptures. So, but before creation, time and space were not there. Then, was there anything before creation? We cannot know anything which does not belong to the world of time and space. So what is that? Was there anything before this world was created? Yes, the creator must have been there. But the source of this world must have been there. And that source was beyond this world of time and space. And in this world of time and space, everything is finite, no matter how large. Everything is finite. And that is beyond this world. That's why that is considered infinity. Not mathematical infinity, philosophical infinity. And so that existence of the source of this world is called transcendental existence, in the sense that that transcends time and space and causation of this world. That is also called divinity, that is also called God, and so many names are used to indicate that thing. That cannot be really described through words and expressions which belong to this world of time, space, and limitations. And those ancient sages of India who discovered the technique of meditation, they say, you will get to know that divinity, the source, and which has become this manifold world. How? Said, with the help of your mind. But the mind belongs to this world of time and space. How can this mind go beyond this world of time and space and know the source, which is transcendental? Then they will say that the mind at that time becomes so transformed that it can reach the outermost frontier of the world of time and space. Take, for example, that compound called H2O, which can exist as ice, it can exist as water, it can exist as water vapor. Now, they are the same substance, and yet they are so different from one another. A chunk of ice, if I put here, it will stay where I put it. It cannot move. It has very little freedom of movement. But water, it has much more freedom of movement. It can flow downward, it can spread out. But when that H2O is in the gaseous state, then it is invisible. Water and ice, they are palpable, they are visible. But water vapor is invisible. Same substance, though. But water vapor can fill out a room like this and reach those windows. Had those windows been made of transparent glass, and by being there, and had let us suppose that this compound has the ability to know and see, then that mind, or actually it is the analogy of the mind. The mind can exist in these three states. But if the mind is transformed, it becomes like water vapor, and it can reach out. It can reach out and reach the frontier of the world of time and space. And by being there, can have a glimpse of what is beyond. That cannot be described. Just as you cannot describe something which is very subtle, very fine in you. What is that? The feeling of joy, that emotion, joy. If a person comes who has never experienced joy, can you describe to that person what joy is? No. Yet you know, you have experienced it. Because it is so abstract, that feeling. It cannot be described through words, adequately described. So also that is something which is beyond this world of time and space, that cannot be described. That's why these scriptures of Hinduism or Vedanta say that God cannot be described through words. But God can be experienced with the help of that purified mind. The mind cannot go out of this world of time and space. It can go to the outermost frontier of this world of time and space. And by being there, have a glimpse of what is beyond. Because it is the mind which knows. It is only that kind of knowing which is possible for the mind. When you look out the window and you see the sky, you say, I have seen the sky. Yes, it is true, but have you seen the entire sky? No. Your knowledge is not exhaustive. Because with your finite mind, you see, or through that finite window, you can see only so much of sky. With your finite mind, the mind is finite. There is no doubt about it. Because what is going to happen the next moment, does your mind know it with any amount of certainty? No. You can only guess. What happened in the remote past, you don't know. So many things the mind does not know. What the mind knows is but little compared to what all things are there to be known. Even Newton, the British were extremely proud of Newton. And the village minstrels used to sing in England. What song? God, nature and nature's laws lay hid in night. God said, let Newton be, and all was light. I read that when I was a young boy in India. We studied in British schools, and we studied British novelists and writers and scientists more than others. You see. We didn't know too much about American literature. We knew the names, of course, of some of them. So they used to say, and it was true. When I grew up, I studied science. Then I could see that Newton had touched so many areas of science. It is not just laws of gravitation. It is believed that he is the one who introduced calculus, one of those people. And it is also believed that, when I studied physics, we read about light and we came to know about Newton's rings. You see, so many subjects he knew. And when he was young, he might have had some youthful arrogance. So he most probably thought he was the greatest, like that boxer Cassius Clay. Later on became Muhammad Ali. He used to say, I am the greatest. It is not impossible that Newton most probably thought that way at one time or the other. And if he thought, we must have to forgive him for that. But when he became older, much older, then he said that all that he had come to know is but little compared to the vast amount of knowledge which is not known yet. He said, I am just collecting pebbles on the seashore of knowledge. The rest of knowledge is not known, you see. So that is the capacity of the human mind. Considering that, the human mind has to be taken for something which is finite. So with the finite mind, it is not possible to know that infinity which is divinity. Yet we can know a little bit, you see. And if I have seen the sky through a small window, it is the same sky. A larger window will show me more of that sky, but it is the same sky, but more of it. That's it. So that's why these people who came to know divinity through their minds, purified minds, and such minds are called purified minds. And meditation is a technique which can enable a person to purify his or her mind. That is one of the techniques. First of all, the mind has immense power. Very little is known to an average person about the power of the mind. We hear of nuclear bombs and all these things. Oh, what devastation nuclear bombs can create in the world. But compared to the mind, that is nothing. Behind all these things, there is the mind, human mind. Behind the computer, there is the human mind. This artificial intelligence, they use an expression. That is not really intelligent. You see, you wind up a clock and it goes on ticking for several hours. Is the clock doing it? No. You imparted that energy. So behind it, so human mind is the most wonderful thing. And most people, they don't even know their mind. And that's what I intend to talk about during this series of talks that I shall be giving. In the first talk, I don't want to exhaust everything, and it is not possible to exhaust everything. I have to discuss what the mind is. Let me talk a little bit about what the mind is, which is to be concentrated in a special way, and in order that it could be called meditation, and which can enable one to know divinity. Why the mind and the senses have to be withdrawn from outside and focused within? Focus within means with the greatest possible concentration, because the divinity is in us. That mind will reach the frontier of space, time and space, and will be able to have a glimpse of divinity which is in us. That's how a person becomes spiritually illumined, according to Hinduism. Now, what is the mind? It is good to know, because if you don't know the mind, then the knowledge is not complete, isn't it? Because it is the mind which has to be controlled, and it has the mind which has to be concentrated, and what concentrates the mind, what controls the mind, that also you have to know. But first let me tell you a little bit about the mind. See, there is a joke about Western psychologists. Whether you know it or not, the psychologists, Western psychologists don't yet know what the mind is. Even though they call the subject psychology, I've read quite a few books, and in every book starts, textbook on psychology starts with the chapter, is psychology a science? Because if somehow they can prove that psychology is a science, then that gains respectability. At one time, scientists used to be punished, but now by the church. But now the church has taken the back seat, and the scientists have taken the front seat. That's why, in order to be respectable, you should have the blessing of science. Science says so, so it is. Yes, science, the word science as it means, you see, it means it is a search after truth. That's what is science. That part is okay, but the way it is understood today, science, that is by average people. For them I am making this statement. So I wondered why they want to say just about every book is on psychology starts with, is psychology a science? It is not a science really in the sense, but in one sense it is, because they are trying to know certain truths. So that in taking that meaning it is science. But it is not an established science yet. You see. Or the goal of science is to acquire complete knowledge, isn't it? But that is doubtful, because I try to find out what they have come to know about the mind. They don't know what the mind is. They are still searching for it. It is good. Someday they will know. But the ancient thinkers of India, they were able to know what the mind is. So I was telling about a joke. The joke is a Western psychologist or European psychologist. I should not bundle all of them together. America is different. So America is better, isn't it? So some European psychologist was asked, what's mind? Then the answer was, no matter. No matter. Let us suppose he was British. No matter. Then what's matter? Never mind. That means it is matter is not mind, mind is not matter. That's the concept. But Indian scientists, whom we may call Hindu philosophers, if you want, they definitely know that the mind is matter. It is finer matter. Just as water vapor is that same compound H2O, which we can see in the form of a solid, such as ice. So also the mind is a finer form of matter. Energy and matter, they are the same. That also the Hindu thinkers came to know. They are not different. And the world had to wait for Albert Einstein to come and present his equation, E is equal to mc square. The energy can be converted into matter and vice versa. That is the idea. So, but that was known to ancient Hindu sages long, long ago. It does not mean that they are better or worse, but it just means that they were lucky to have come to know those things. How did they know those things? By developing their minds, transforming their minds into what they call Shuddha Chitta. Shuddha Chitta means pure minds. So, how that mind can be purified, they have given instructions also. That is, this is how you can purify your mind, and this is how you can experience everything. You see, sometimes a scientist finds out something, and then that is considered a hypothesis. When other scientists will think the same way, then that hypothesis will become a theory. All theories are at the same time, they are situationally correct. In a different situation, that theory may not hold good. In any case, first, all these ideas which are discovered by a thinker today, call him a scientist or whatever, that will be called a hypothesis. But this hypothesis will become a theory when other scientists will accept this hypothesis as correct. And how will they accept these things? With the help of their own understanding, isn't it? Each one is equipped with his or her mind. And with those minds, you see, they will try to examine this. So it is the mind which knows whether something is correct or incorrect, isn't it? If many minds accept something as correct, then that becomes a theory. That hypothesis becomes a theory. So we judge everything that way. And they said that you purify your mind, then you will be able to know this truth. Others will say, well, what he is saying may not be true. Maybe he is under some kind of illusion. Then they say, no, this is the technique. You go through this technique, then you will be able to purify your mind. And then you yourself will experience it. If many people can do that, then that will become a theory, isn't it? Then also it is not true that if many people accept something as true, that is necessarily true, that can be an illusion also. That we have to, just to confuse you a little, let me discuss it a little. Because let us suppose that there is a distant star, the light of which takes 5 years to reach Earth. That means reach us. And then let us suppose that the star got destroyed 3 years ago, completely disintegrated. Even then, all the people of the world who have eyesight, good eyesight, they will be seeing that star existing in the sky for 3 more years, while the star is not there. This is an example of universal hallucination. In philosophy, it is used. Yet, it is the subjective experience which is very important. Sometimes, in philosophy, there is a lot of fight between objectivity and subjectivity. But truly speaking, those who fight, they are also saying things which they have understood. You see, that means eventually it is subjectivity which wins. If I experience something, if I know something to be true, then that is true for me. For me. So that's why they say, you develop your mind, then you will be able to know the truths. And how to develop that mind? Which truth? That elusive truth called divinity. We have given a name. This word doesn't mean anything so far as divinity is concerned. We could have given any other name. We could have called it X or Y or Z. It doesn't matter. But there is something there. And that is the source of everything. And once we know that, we have come to know everything. if I know, I go to a chocolate shop, and let me suppose I'm a little boy, and I see an elephant made of chocolate, and then a tiger made of chocolate, a camel made of chocolate, a cat made of chocolate. Then then I think that each one is different. That is a cat, that is a lion, that is this. But the chocolatier knows that all are one and the same. He knows chocolate. So he knows all of them. The forms are only temporary. And when the forms appear, a name is given. Chocolate is given shape of a lion. Then it becomes a lion chocolate. But let the form disappear, it becomes chocolate. That's all. So also if you know the source which has become everything, then you have known everything in this world as that source, as divinity. That's why it is said that those who have known divinity, they have known everything. Because these forms and names, they are temporary. They are always changing, disappearing. A human form, which if you judge it in terms of the person's body, that form is changing every moment. And eventually a time will come when the owner of that body will drop this body. That is called death. And the body will disintegrate. And will become food for vegetation. And that vegetation will be eaten by some grass-eating animals such as deer and goats. And they will gain their bodies. Grass will become their muscle and bones and blood and everything. And eventually some tiny little virus will enter into, let me suppose, a goat, and kills that poor goat. Tiny little, that feeds on the body of that goat. And the goat dies. Then its carcass will disintegrate and will become good fertilizer for vegetation again. So this cycle is going on and on and on. That's how it is. Nothing is permanent, temporary. So divinity is something which is changed, form is being changed. Sometimes the tiger chocolate is converted into a bear chocolate. You can melt it and make it into a bear. Or the form of a cat. It matters little. They're all chocolate. If you know chocolate, you have known them all. So if you have known divinity, which is the source of everything, you have known everything as divinity. That's it. That's why they're called, they're knowers of everything. Well, it is almost 12:15, and 12:15 is a very auspicious time, in case you don't know that. And as it is going to be the first part of my talk only, so I can stop if I want just now. But first and usually when I stop, our treasurer, he has to do his duty. That means only once a week our church collects some donations from people. And those who come here and they think that this talk given by the Swami is worthwhile, then they may put a penny into that basket. So let him do that sacred duty. Now let me conclude with a chant. Om asato ma satgamaya tamaso ma jyotirgamaya mrityor ma mritam gamaya. Om shanti 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 hari om tat sat. From the unreal lead us to the real, from ignorance lead us to knowledge, from death lead us to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.